to learn how to set first, track and achieve goals. It's not something I've ever done in my life. Got very, very little experience with it. I've always been more of like a go with the flow kind of person. And occasionally I get obsessed with some artistic thing and I'll do that. But I've never set a goal and then followed it through and set out to achieve it. So it's something I wanted to try recently. Mostly because I've been obsessed with many more things, kind of in the washer machine, doing one thing, loving it, stopping, being distracted by something else, being pulled by something else, being called by another. And that's been a lot of fun. But I wanted to be able to do one at a time. So I wanted to learn how to do that, and figuring out how to do goal management or tracking, task management or goal setting. I figured that would be the way of doing it. So I've been looking into it. I started by asking a lot of friends what methods they use. And it turns out most people don't have any system for tracking goals or setting goals or achieving their goals. A lot of my friends are kind of anti-goals, which was interesting for me to discover. So that's been fun. But some of my friends have been very helpful. There are some people who have pretty extensive ways of setting and tracking goals. There are a lot of people who have extensive ways of setting and tracking goals that they've never used or never used successfully. You know, they start creating this, they have a system that they've created and they use it, and they've got documents and they've got notions, and Notion, it's an app. It's common for people to start goals but never achieve them. So I asked a lot of people. I had a few friends who were extremely helpful early on, and I'm still early on. I've only been doing this for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. No, a month and a half. I remember the date. So I had some friends who helped me really early on. Both meditators. Important note. Maybe, I think. Very, very simple advice, which was to use apps, like a calendar app, to remind them to do everything that they do. 2 people told me this. I've heard similar things from other people, meditators. Generally, not usually calendar apps specifically, but I've heard other things about writing notes. It's a kind of a thing where and I'm assuming my friends have a similar experience of, I'll just feel fine not doing anything. So I'll be interested in doing something. I'll do it. Feels great. I'll do it. Whether it's done or not doesn't really matter. Once I have drifted my attention to something else, I can just sit and do whatever something else is, and not ever think about the first thing that I was doing. Or I might just sit and do nothing and not think about any of the things. Anyway, not a great recipe for doing things. So I started setting up some reminders to study and learn about goals. And in that study, I found a system that was created by Jeffrey Martin. At least it was presented by Jeffrey Martin, who's another meditator. Presented by Jeffrey Martin, I think I'll say. Maybe it's created by him. I don't know. I don't know exactly how he's presenting it. But it's a modification of another system. It's a modification of a system by Gabrielle Utgen. And her system is called Whoop. So we're going to start talking about Whoop first. I'm going to go a little bit fine-grained with what Whoop is, pretty narrow system, and you can apply it to multiple goals. You can apply it to any goal, essentially. And it doesn't have to be a big goal. It can be like an activity that you want to do this afternoon. It can be something that you want to do immediately, or something that you want to do in the future, like a long term. And then once that's established, we're going to go and to understand what Jeffrey Martin's more expanded system is, which is utilizing Gabriel Utjin's WOOP system. And then we're going to discuss how it should be applied for people who are meditators. Because that's how it's presented for Jeffrey Martin. He presents it as a tool specifically for meditators. And I'm saying meditators. I guess it doesn't have to be a meditator. Maybe I'm being a little too loose with the language here, but we'll stay meditators. So the WOOP system, it's pretty simple. You start with WOOP. Let's just explain what WOOP is. WOOP is an acronym. The first word is wish. WOOP, wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. It's very simple. Wish is the goal. You have a goal, you have a wish. You just think about that. And essentially you're building a mental association. This is the whole idea, the whole plan for all of this. It turns out the whole thing is just going to be building a mental associations. So you start with a wish, whatever your wish is. And then you associate it with an outcome. This is like what happens when you achieve the goal. What is the pleasant feeling that you're going to get? It's positive thinking. The positive, the positive thinking. Whatever you think will happen from achieving the goal in that pleasant sensation, you want that to be associated with the goal, so that when you think of the goal, you immediately think of the positive outcome of that goal. That's something that a lot of people do. You hear people talk about positive thinking. Gabriel Utjin did some studies and learned that people who do positive thinking don't usually achieve anything. Fairly positive thinking is not very helpful when it's done by itself. So that's where this next step comes from. Wish, outcome, obstacle. You want to associate the outcome with the obstacle. You want to associate the positive feelings of achieving the goal with the problems that are stopping you from achieving the goal. You can do 1, you can do 3, you can have 1 billion, it doesn't matter. Whatever problems you have, you want that, and that is to motivate you. That is the part that actually gets you into action, because you have some problem. You're not just satiated by the positive thinking and the positive feelings from that positive thinking. And then you associate that obstacle with the plan for overcoming the obstacle. It's so simple. It's so simple. So this is the very basic mental association. Gabriel Utjin talks about it. Apparently, she's got some studies, like scientific studies and research on people who have done different forms of goal setting exercises, and this one is the most helpful for most people. Mental association with your goal into a positive outcome, a barrier or obstacle, into a plan. So essentially the idea is that whenever you think of the goal, you go through all of them at the same time. If you build the mental association strong enough, and then essentially you'll just always have the plan ready to do, and you'll do it whenever you think about the goal. That's the basics. So that can be applied to any goal. A little bit of a modification that Jeffrey Martin talks about to make it a little simpler, to make it a little bit stronger, to make the mental association stronger. He says that each outcome, we're going to call it outcome, he doesn't, whatever reason, when he presents this, he doesn't talk about it using the language of Gabriel Oettingen. Anyway, with the outcome, use a single word. And with the obstacle, also use a single word. So that the mental association is like quick. You know what I mean? It's extremely, this one is sharp. You got a goal, you have a single word that is the outcome, and you have a single word that is the barrier. You make it snappy. And then the plan, we'll talk about the plan later, but it becomes a checklist. That's very simple, very, very easy checklist. That's how it becomes. So the main expansion here, the important expansion, is to make sure that each obstacle and each outcome is a single word. You can and you should elaborate on that single word and make it an actual full paragraph or sentence, or however it doesn't have to be grammatically or lexically defined, but you can elaborate it further than a single word. But it starts with a single word so that the concept is very quick and the mental association becomes stronger. So this is helpful for regular people, for all people. But I found it especially helpful. I'll go over all of it and why it's especially helpful for me. But I found it especially helpful in this simple way because just building the mental association is easy. And once the mental association is built, and there's no effort or I don't know how to describe it. It's just so easy. It's so easy to do all the things. It's so easy to do all the things once you have those mental associations built. And then we have a very, very interesting and important additional mental association that Jeffrey Martin likes to add, or has added to this system, which is that for the plan, you have a specific plan, and all of these things come about. You think of your goal, you have an outcome, you have an obstacle, you have a plan. Easy, they all come at the same time. You've built the mental association. With the plan, you can also add another mental association. And that mental association is with a particular mental state that you think would be helpful for doing the plan. So you have a particular plan, whatever the plan is, single checklist, basic stuff. For each item of the checklist, if you like, or for the whole plan, you can associate a particular mental state. So that means that you can write down for yourself or think about for yourself. This is all going to be written, by the way. This whole thing is written down. For the mental state, you can just imagine what mental states would be helpful for achieving a plan, for doing a simple plan. And they can be something like being relaxed. It could be something like feeling loving. It can be something like being open. Whatever mental state, it doesn't really matter what the mental state is, but you can just set your own mental state. And again, this is just crazy tech. Because you think of a goal, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter why, you feel pleasant from thinking about the outcome of that goal. You know exactly what is stopping you from having achieved the goal. You have a very clear plan for achieving the goal. And then suddenly this mental state just appears and it takes over. and you have this perfect mental state to achieve the plan, which gets rid of the barrier, which gets you that pleasant feeling in the end. So that's the basis of the whole system. It's very simple. Now, Jeffrey Martin talks more about specific mental states. I don't think it's extremely important for the scope of this discussion. But you can learn more about Jeffrey Martin if you care about him. He talks about different mental states that generally meditators could easily find themselves in. Maybe easily is not a fair word. Meditators could find themselves in. Commonly do. Commonly is not fair. Scratch everything I'm saying. It's possible. Okay, it's available for you. It's possible. All right, specific instructions for people who are meditators. All right, so generally, meditators don't care about goals. That's pretty simple to say. That's fair to say. I guess most people don't care about goals anyway, but meditators have an especially difficult time with goals, I think. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. Some meditators have an especially difficult time with goals. I've gotten a little bit of pushback from some meditators. The doing of anything, the wanting of anything, any desires, any sort of future projection can become pretty difficult. That's why the calendar has been helpful for me, the reminders for everything. Because of that, Jeffrey Martin he talks about developing a very broad set of mental associations across multiple areas of life. So, for meditators, this essentially should not be used just to achieve or to set a singular goal, not even two goals. This system of mental associations should be carried out for many goals across many areas of life. So, for example, habitat is one of the areas. I don't actually remember all the areas. I don't have them written down as the ones that he's presenting. I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that I've been doing for myself. Habitat, as in like where you live. Job, as in you know what a job is. Finances, separate from job, separate. You know what finances are too. Relationships. Is that all of them? I think there's a couple more. Anyway, there's a couple more. Communication is one that I'm working on for myself. And art, the one that I'm doing for myself. For some reason, I'm calling it aesthetics. Yeah, anyway, whatever. I'm going to call it art for this discussion. Art. There's a couple. You can do a bunch. You could do a bunch. You have many areas of your life. And you can just build these mental associations. And then things just start to kind of... Oh, health is another one. Health. And you just have these... It's bizarre. It makes sense. It's easy tech. So... Generally, there are people who you might become a bit neglectful. If you're satisfied with your life to some extreme degree, you might become neglectful of a lot of things. I, at one point, was drinking tea a lot. I still drink tea a lot. I drink tea every day. You see this tea set here? It's great. I'm having some amazing tea today. There was a time where I was drinking tea, and for some reason, I was enjoying the tea so much that I just didn't want to go to work. So I stopped going to work. And I stopped going to work for 2 years. I didn't work for 2 years. I had enough money to not work for 2 years and keep my house. And it happened like right around the time of COVID. So it was a bit convenient for me for a number of reasons. But I just became isolated because COVID was happening and most people were isolated. And I didn't have a job. And I was just sitting around drinking tea. And I did not care if I had food. I didn't care if I never checked how much money I had. I literally didn't know how much time I had to do that. Like I just stopped. I didn't think about anything. I didn't plan anything. I just stopped doing everything and just drank tea. Somehow I had enough money in all my accounts that everything just kept working. And I had auto pay set up for everything because everything worked out, strangely enough. Apparently that type of thing is kind of common for people who are meditators at some point. You gotta meditate a lot, but to not have that happen, you can create all these mental associations across many areas of life. And for me, this took quite a long time because, again, I'm not used to setting goals. My mind isn't generally configured in that way of, looking for something that I desire, focusing on it. It's not really how I think. So I had this list of whatever areas of life, and the intention to have a goal for each of those areas of life, and then the intention to create an obstacle or an outcome, and then an obstacle, and then a plan. And it took me several weeks of nearly daily looking at this to create and fully lay out all of the goals. Another important innovation or change that is presented by Jeffrey Martin, you can use multiple outcomes, multiple pleasant outcomes, multiple single word pleasant outcomes as distinct, separate, pleasant outcomes, and multiple barriers for each one. As many as you care to have. Just do at least 2 outcomes for each goal and 2 barriers for each goal. But then you can do more if you want. I'm feeling a little cold, so I'm going to turn my heater on. I'll be back. Heat is on. All right, does that make sense so far? That's the basics of the system. It's really, really simple. All right, and then from there, you have all these areas of your life, whatever they are: habitat, finances, health, relationships, whatever. You have all these areas of your life. You've got all these pleasant associations with them, and you have the mental flexibility to associate your whatever mental state that would be helpful for achieving those goals. I'm overstating that. They're mental states that are helpful for doing a plan. In any case, you've developed all that, which you might And then at the end of this, you have a long list of presumably a simple checklist. The plans, you have all the plans. And that could be converted into a checklist. Now, it's not really necessary. Well, it might be necessary. I've been using the checklist. It's very helpful. Oh my goodness. It's extremely helpful. I love it. It's so great. But even before I was completed with this whole system and had a checklist, before I had finished it all, as I was doing it, like, as I was doing this over the past, however long I've been doing this, couple weeks, month and a half, a lot of things in my life have been going pretty well in all of the areas that I've been working on, because I've been developing the mental association, and having built the mental association, things just kind of naturally happen. But once you have all of these plans, you can build checklists. And I've did some study to learning how to make a checklist. Something from Dr. Atul Gawande, I think his name is Atul Gawande. You'll be able to find him from the Checklist Manifesto, is a book that he wrote. Now, I'm not much of a reader. Asterisk, I probably am a major reader. I don't identify as a reader, but I probably am. Anyway, Atul Gawande wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto. I never read it. I just looked at YouTube videos that he's been doing. That he presents things in YouTube videos. I like to watch YouTube videos. So in those YouTube videos, he talks about how to make checklists, and also very helpful. There are ways you can make checklists. There are a lot of things. For some reason, I guess I'm just open to. I don't know. I've done a lot of. There are things like goals, which I've never done, and I just assume that there's something I can learn, so I go out to learn it. And checklists, again, is something I've never done. I kind of have the vague idea that it's easy to do because it seems really easy. But since I've never done it, I'll go and try to learn it. I'll ask people. I'll do research into what are ways that people do checklists and what are different ways of doing checklists. I'm thinking about swallowing right now because I'm drinking tea here, and I remember really early on I was trying to teach people how to swallow tea. I don't do it anymore, but it's probably important to do as a part of the tea drinking. Drinking tea is really nice and it's very pleasant, but a major part of the drinking tea, the pleasant part of it to me, is the smoothness of the tea. The tea itself can just be smooth and it feels smooth, but then there's the smoothness of the transition from the cup to the mouth, and then from the mouth to the throat and the esophagus and throughout the body. And then there's of course, the smooth transition of how it affects your life, but that's not important. The important part is that there is a smooth transition of swallowing, and there's a way to swallow. There are ways to swallow in which you kind of catch in the throat. You get like a, you know that sound? That's not the actual sound, but that's the sound that represents the actual sound. You know what the sound is? It's that sound. That's not the real sound, but that's the sound. You can swallow in a way that does that, but you can also swallow in a different way that doesn't do that. It's actually why I sit in the way that I do. I'm getting off topic here, but I'm enjoying it. So we're gonna keep going off topic for a second. I watched some videos about drinking tea, and somebody mentioned that it would be helpful to drink tea with a straight back. So I started sitting with a straight back so I can drink tea. very smooth. So there are a lot of people who kind of another thing. A lot of people kind of hunch over to drink the tea. I kind of want to go further into detail. So okay, one thing. All right, we'll do a couple of things. All right. A lot of people drink tea with one hand. I do it all the time also. But a lot of people drink tea with one hand. There's something about that. It's not balanced. You get thrown off a bit. No good. A lot of people move their body to the tea, like they move their body to the cup. And they kind of like, oh, that was rough. You know what I mean? You kind of go down to it. So if you just have your back straight, you got both hands on a cup, you got a little bit more balance here. You can bring the cup to your mouth. You can really just not move your head at all or your neck. And you can just like, it's like a perfectly aligned system already. And you can swallow really easily. You can also tilt your head back a little bit, and you can just swallow like I'm going into too much detail. This is one of the things I was obsessed with, as you might imagine. being being pulled by personal obsessions, tea was the main one. This is the one that took me the distance. So you can just drink tea, and anyway, that's why I'm using this cup also. It's got the flared lip here. Can you see that? It's got a flared lip, so that makes it easier to have it transition from the cup to the mouth, because you can just slightly tilt the cup and it smoothly transitions into the mouth. Anyway, there are ways you can slightly tilt your head back, and then the tea liquid just slides down the throat, and you don't really have to even swallow. It just kind of goes down. Advanced technique. I don't remember why I was talking about swallowing. Smoothness, transitions. No. Is that it? It's just saying that I drank tea, I quit my job, I really just stopped going. I tell people I quit, but I really just stopped going. There's a slight distinction. Meditators. Checklist. That's what it was. So I got a checklist, and I will do research on things that seem easy, like swallowing. I don't tell people how to swallow anymore. I used to instruct people for swallowing, but it just comes. I think it becomes a bit. I don't know. Maybe I should instruct more people. So I developed a checklist, and there are two types of checklists. One type of checklist is a read-do checklist. It's pretty simple. What you do is you read something and then you do it. So you have a checklist that you can just, with these modern apps, you can have it sprinkled throughout your day. Your phone will ping you or something like that, and it'll tell you to do something. It's like you read what it is to do, and then you do it. And you've got another checklist, which is a do and confirm, which is different because you just do something, and then later you confirm that you did it. Do confirm. Two types of checklist. I separated my list of things, my plans, into these two different types of checklists. And the related ones are in the related read do checklist, and then the do confirm are just put together. Each checklist item is very, very simple. And for me, I have various mental states associated with the plans. So I get a little notification on my phone or wherever, and it tells me, I can do this, I can do a particular thing. And then I get a mental state that's very pleasant, and that just happens to arise. So this is my current familiarity and understanding of how to set goals and perhaps how to achieve them. The tracking them is the checklist part, because you can have a checklist, very simple checklist. Everything should be very easy to say I did it or didn't do it. If it's difficult to determine if you did or didn't do it, then you didn't do it. Or you need to update what the checklist is checking. So pretty simple. The checklist is the tracking part. The rest of it is the setting part, and then I'll report back in a couple months or years for the achievement part. See how that goes. So one of my goals is for communication, to learn how to communicate more effectively and more clearly. If you've ever watched any of my streams, you might notice that I'm pretty scattered in my communication. I like to go off on tangents. It's a lot of fun. It's fun to branch off into many different subjects. It's fun to make spontaneous connections between various things. So I do that. But I also want to have the practice of communicating clearly. So that's one of the reasons why this stream is currently happening. And then another is for relationships. And a big part of that, it will be to have people understanding my experience, people as in my friends. I want people to understand my personal experience, which would mean that sharing more of my personal experience is a part of that. And here we are. So with all that, some of that might be helpful to you. Some of it just might be interesting to you for learning about how I am operating currently. And I just said names of people. So maybe you'll learn more about Dr. Atul Gawande and his checklist, and Gabriel Udjin and our system for setting goals. Whoop system, or Jeffrey Martin and his he has a categorization of many mental states. That's kind of his main thing, I think. So that's it for this stream. Great success. Thanks for joining. I'll be back next week. I'm forgetting that next week is Thanksgiving. I'll be back on one of these days next week. I might be back on two of the days next week. And yeah, that'll be fun. Oh, I had so much. Okay, yesterday, I just want to say this. Yesterday, I had a great time. I was drinking tea. I was sitting here drinking tea. And trying to systematically note all the things that I was experiencing. It didn't go very well, but I had a great time. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I was recording myself. And I think I messed up the recording. I think I had an error with my microphone. Something I messed up in my settings, and it doubled the microphone. So it may be lost media, but it was so entertaining to myself. I wasn't. I was initially just doing it. I wasn't doing it in order to share. I was just trying to document where I was with my current system of writing down tasting notes. But then I just kind of got off. It was fun. Anyway, I had a good time, but maybe lost media. I'm gonna try to figure out if I can save it and salvage it and share it with you guys because it was cool. That's just a random thing. All right, y'all. I'm gonna leave now. Tea was great. I'll talk to y'all later. See you next week. Bye.